Hello all, welcome to another session in this course. As part of this session, I am going to cover the next topic, that is default constructors in JavaScript. So let's get started. What exactly are these default constructors in JavaScript? So in the previous sessions, I covered a lot about constructors, guys. Now I'm going to cover about the default constructors in JavaScript language. So in a class, if you don't create a constructor and for that class, if you are creating an object, still nothing will happen. Even though in the object creation statement, you are calling a constructor, but inside the class, you have not created a constructor. How this is possible, I am going to cover in this session with practical demonstration, guys. For that, I'll just launch this Visual Studio Code, and here, let me create a JavaScript file, and here I'm going to create a class. I'll just name this class as animal class. So inside this animal class, I'm going to create a method, let's say eat method, let's say. Let me create a sample method, let's say eat method, and here I'll write animal is eating, okay? When this particular method inside this class is called, I'll just print animal is eating, that's it. Now, inside this particular animal class, do you see any constructor created? Apart from this method, is there any constructor created, guys? No, right? There's no constructor. So when I say new animal, okay, when I create an object using the new keyword for this animal class, okay, let's say a is equal to, and object reference name is, okay, const a is equal to new animal. If I say here, this is a constructor calling statement in the animal class, but there is no constructor, but I am still calling the constructor while creating the object for this animal class. So will I get any error? Will I get any error with this? So even I'll use this object reference to call this method also, guys, in that class. Let's see what will happen. Will I get any error? Because I'm calling the constructor, but the constructor is not created inside the animal class. So is any problem going to happen? No demo.js. No problem will come, guys. If you run this, you see animal is eating got printed. But what about this animal constructor? Okay, I'm calling this constructor of the animal class, but since there is no constructor in the animal class, I'm not getting any error here. Rather, the program is working perfectly fine. The reason behind that is JavaScript will maintain a default constructor here. Okay, default inbuilt empty constructor JavaScript will maintain. There will be a constructor whether you create here or not. There will be one constructor, guys, like this. There will be one constructor created by the JavaScript like this. An empty constructor which doesn't have any code, okay, doesn't have any parameters, will be maintained inbuilt by the JavaScript language. Whether you write this, also same logic, right? You see, when I run this, you will get the same output. If you remove this also, okay, if you remove this also, by default, a default constructor is maintained by the animal class. That is the reason when you create an object for the animal class and we are calling the animal class constructor, since there is no constructor visible here, but still I'm not getting the problem because this animal class, any class in JavaScript will maintain a default constructor. If no constructor exists here, if no constructor is created, then default constructor will be considered by the class. So here, a default empty constructor, okay, which doesn't have any code will be, you see, let me comment this part. This will be internally maintained by this any class in JavaScript. Fine. So this is what is a default constructor, guys. Now you will get a question like, what if there is another situation where you have this animal class and you created one more class, which is a child class, dog extends animal. Okay, this is another situation, guys. Here, I created a child class for this animal class. And here in this child class, I'm not going to create any constructor, but I'm going to create, let's say, some method or something. Okay. Or else let's keep it like this. Okay. I'll not create any constructor, guys. But now, I'll not create a constructor inside the dog class, but I'm going to create a constructor here. Okay. I'll just remove this part. Here, animal class is there. Here, dog class is there. Okay. Dog class is a child class of the animal class. In the animal class, I'm creating a constructor, but in the child class, I'm not creating any constructor. Here, okay, I'm creating a constructor like this. This dot name is equal to name. And here console.log, I'll print the name. Okay. So here in the parent class, I created a constructor, but in the child class, there is no constructor. In this kind of situation, when I create an object for the child class like this, and when I create an object for the child class like this, const d is equal to or dog is equal to like this, if I write, and here if I pass some name, okay, let's say Tommy or something, if I pass here, what will happen? Will this work? You see, I'm calling the, okay, what I'm doing here, guys, I'm calling a constructor here, okay? In this object creation statement for the dog class, I'm calling a constructor here, which is actually passing an argument also. But do we have any default constructor? Do we have any constructor here inside the dog class? No. So internally, this dog class will maintain a default constructor. Default, even though there is no constructor, okay, written by us here in the dog class, but if since you are calling this constructor here, a default constructor will be maintained, but here parent class already has a constructor, guys. This will be inherited by the kind of child class, right? So here, even though you call like this, what will happen? The default constructor, okay, when you call something like this dog Tommy or something, the default constructor will be there here. That is a constructor kind of stuff will be there inside this constructor. Inside this is not visible actually, okay? The dog class is maintaining this kind of default constructor, though I am writing here for so that you can visualize what kind of default constructor the JavaScript language is maintaining here in place of the constructor. Inside this constructor, guys, inside this constructor, there will be something like super of name, okay? Like here, name will be there, okay? Constructor of a default constructor and with super dot name will be maintained here, guys. Okay, this is what a default constructor kind of stuff will be maintained internally, guys. Okay, so even though there is no particular constructor here, but this kind of default constructor will be maintained by the JavaScript language. So assume that this kind of stuff is internally maintained by the dog class, even though you have not created. So this will go to this will call the super will call this parent class constructor and this dot name and all these things are going to work. Okay. So this kind of default constructor will be maintained if the parent class has a constructor. The child class will maintain this kind of default constructor. Okay. So in different situation, different type of default constructors will be maintained by the classes in JavaScript. Let me run this code and see, you see Tommy got printed here, okay? The name Tommy got printed here, okay? So here we have the nodes. Let's use the nodes for reference, okay? So let me copy these nodes and let me open this in the browser here so that you can see the same nodes about the default constructors in JavaScript. In JavaScript, a default constructor is what a class gets automatically, okay, if you don't explicitly define one. Okay, if you don't define something, automatically the class will consider a default constructor even though you create an object for that. Okay, even though base class default constructor. Okay, so this kind of empty default constructor will be automatically provided by the JavaScript classes, guys. Okay, whether you write this or not, this kind of thing will be maintained. Okay, so when you create an object for this, okay, so when you create an object for this, automatically this invisible default empty constructor will be called, though is not visible. Okay. So what if a child class extends a parent class and the parent class has this kind of constructor? In this case, the child class will maintain this kind of default constructor. Just now I covered this right here. The child class will maintain this kind of default constructor if in case the parent class has a constructor. And when you are creating when you are creating the object for the child class, even though it doesn't have any constructor, this kind of default constructor will be called if the parent class has a constructor having some parameters. So the third thing that you need to understand here is, okay, the third thing that you need to understand here is, let me remove all this stuff, okay, let me remove all this code and all. If there is no constructor which is written by you inside the class, automatically a default constructor will be, okay, default constructor will be considered by the animal class, okay. Invisible default empty constructor will be maintained by this JavaScript in this animal class. But what if I create a constructor here? Okay, as a programmer or developer of this code, if I really write a constructor here, what will happen? What will happen? What will happen to the default inbuilt empty maintained constructor by the JavaScript language? That will be no more considered. Okay, the moment you create a constructor, the default constructor will be ignored by the JavaScript language. If you don't create the constructor, then only the default constructor. If you create a constructor inside a class, this constructor will be given preference over the default constructor. There will be no more constructor. Okay, no more default constructor. So let's say A is equal to new animal. If I create an object for this, you see what will happen? This constructor will be called instead of the default constructor, and you'll get the output like this. You see, hi will be printed. So hope guys, with a practical demonstration, okay, you understood what exactly are the default constructors in JavaScript. So that's all for this session. See you in the next session. Thank you. Bye bye.